This week on the Road Unfiltered Podcast, we have the wonderfully talented Katie Kauss. She has toured with John Party, Ashley McBride, and is the creative director and photographer responsible for all the beautiful CMA portraits. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have conversations that you and I have had individually, just on the phone, but record them because they're really fun conversations.
Yes.
And I've learned a lot from all of these talks that we've had. And yeah.
Well, I learn a lot from looking at all your photos because they're just insane, absolutely insane.
That is very kind of you to say. I appreciate it.
Because it's, we just kind of do some welcome banner here. And, like I said, or like you said, we've had a conversation on the phone and, we've Instagrammed each other and we've texted each other and stuff like that. And it's like, now that we get to kind of sit face to face and just kind of talk about, I want to know your story. I want to know how you got from where you were to what you're doing now and all the jobs that you're doing within this country music industry and all the touring stuff that you've done with Ashley McBride, John Party. Yeah. So let's go.
So where would you like to start? Like the very beginning?
Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about that first camera that when you got it in your hand, you're like, shit, I need to do this for a living.
So when I was little and growing up, my parents had a Pentax K1000 camera that they kept in the cabinet in the den, where you'd watch TV, and it would, those cabinets where your parents keep all these random things, and especially the 80s.
Kind of like all this right here.
Exactly. Like all of this. Exactly.
Right.
So I would take it and it was like click wind, but there was never any film in it. I had no concept of what a light meter was or what anything meant, but just holding it and that ultimately became my first camera. It did work. Everything was fine and you just needed a battery. So I think I took my first film class when I was in 9th grade at the local art center, which is still a really wonderful art center in Atlanta called the Sproul Art Center. And I remember it just the first time you're ever in a dark room and you see a picture appear in the developer is just, it's weird to say this now because I don't think a lot of people get to experience that.
Yeah, I never experienced that.
Really?
Yeah.
That magic never went away from me in the dark room. And I was in a dark room all throughout high school and college and then a little bit out. And if I could, I would do it again now if I had the time. It's magical. It sounds really silly and cheesy, but it is really wonderful to see these images that you made just pop up in this literal dark room. But yeah, that was the first camera I ever used. And what's funny is that even nowadays, all my digital cameras and everything's automated and the numbers for some things are arbitrary. They don't really mean a lot anymore. What does a film speed mean anymore?
Right.
But one of my first teachers had me take off the lens on my K1000 and they said, take the aperture ring and go and move it from side to side. And you could actually see it going in and out. Okay. Yeah. And to this day, when I'm composing an image and deciding what I want my depth of field to be and what I want it to look like, I still see that ring. I still see, and it still helps me conceptualize the depth of field in my image or anything in the image, which is crazy to think that that one lesson that I was taught when I was 14 is still something that is every day in my brain.
Yeah.
When I'm shooting, even at the top of the K1000 where there are the shutter speeds, next to the 60th, there's a red dot. And it is basically to indicate anything below that you would need a tripod. And that is something I still think about.
Wow, that's interesting.
How slow, how can I hold still?
Yeah.
And that's how I always interpreted that red dot. Someone told me that when I was first starting. And so anything slower than that, you, the human to hold it and not get shake.
Right.
So, and again, when I'm setting my shutter speeds now, I still think about that.
So what was the next camera that you actually used that worked? Because you said that you were just kind of
No, that worked.
Oh, it did?
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
I used that camera. I had to replace it.
Do you still use it?
I do, but what happened was the shutter, I was out of college working and I was playing around with it and the light meter broke. And I emailed Pentax to try and convince them to fix it and all this. It was wildly expensive to fix a light meter. So I actually had to find a second one on eBay. Which at the time was only $40. This is before shooting with film became popular again.
Yeah.
So someone recently was like, "Oh, I'm looking for this camera," and I was like, "Oh, just go on eBay, get this Pentax K1000," and I was wild how expensive they were.
Really?
Yeah.
So how much were they back in the day?
I have no idea. That's actually a good question. I don't know how much they were.
What are they now?
They were like over $100 to get them on eBay. I think the second one I got was $40.
Wow.
I mean, but I still have the physical original. It still works. Like if you had and I have an external light meter, but I don't want to use it.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Atlanta.
You from Atlanta?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Born and raised.
Gotcha. So do you come back or do you still live in Atlanta?
No, I live in Nashville.
You do live in Nashville.
Yeah.
Why did I think you didn't live in Nashville?
Yeah, I live in Nashville. I spent a lot of time in New York, and then I go back to Atlanta. But yeah, I live in Nashville.
Gotcha. So when did you get to Nashville? What brought you to Nashville?
So after college, I moved to New York City, and I worked at People Magazine for about 9 years, which is how I worked my way into country music. The cliff notes of the story, and this is weirdly true that this is how my life turned out, but Lady A at the time had one song on TV, okay? Love Don't Live Here. And when I was getting ready for work, I was a photo editor at People, but I was on people.com. And people knew that I was from the South, and therefore, and I had started getting more and more into country music. And so the multimedia director at the time, which is a funny term to think of now that you're the multimedia director. And I want to say this is about 2008. This guy, Evan Shapiro, came to me and said, hey, have you ever heard of this band Lady A? And I said, yeah, they have one song. I would watch CMT in the mornings just to listen to music when I was getting ready for work.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, do you want to interview them? And I was like, sure. And I had never done an interview in my entire life. I was not a journalism student.
Right.
I was an art student. So I wanted to make the photos. I didn't care as much about doing the interviewing.
Right.
And I vividly remember writing down 6 questions. And there was another editor who was like, you should ask them in this order. It was just, I think I was 2000, who knows how old I was, 24,
right,
25. And I remember going in and interviewing them. And it was I wasn't on camera. It was just an off-camera interview. And that was the first time I ever did anything interacting with an artist.
Oh, wow.
And it took a couple years, but then slowly I started bringing in artists to do video interviews in the studio at People. And I talked my way into a couple of trips to Nashville and to Vegas, Dallas, wherever the ACMs were, a couple of those years.
Gotcha.
And down to CMA Fest and to CMA Awards. So I had this weird intro into country music because at work I would want to be shooting more. So I would, speak to a publicist and say, hey, we could do a gallery on people.com. I'm going to come spend the day with you and shoot it. And somehow I got away with it at work. And it was wonderful. I had some really good bosses and people that understood. I did all my work and I feel like that time too, back in because they were signed 07, 08 in that area. Did you know, this is a crazy story. I filmed them signing their record deal. Seriously?
Yeah, with Mike Dungan in the room and the three of them. Yeah, I was shooting BTS for them and I shot that. And I don't know if do you remember it was kind of like a BTS video of Love Don't Live Here. It was their very, very first video before the official video came out. The very first one, I did that video.
No way. Yeah. This must have been around the same time.
Oh, it was. It was 2007, 2008 because they were, at the time, they were managed by the same management company that was with Keith Urban, or that managed Keith Urban.
Okay.
And that's who I was working with at the time. And they're like, hey, we got this new artist, Lady Annabellum. You want to shoot this? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I shot them actually doing their first music video. I shot them signing their record deal, and then I went out on the road with them and shot some stuff for a GAC special. Oh. Yeah, when they were just breaking out in these brand new, So I thought that's actually kind of funny that you did the Lady A stuff right in that same time.
It was 2008, and for a while I could still find that video on the website. I don't know if it's there anymore, but I also remember getting invited to their show at Joe's Pub and feeling oh, this is cool. They gave me and my friend tickets and we got to go to the show and say hi afterwards. It was this world that completely foreign to me.
Yeah. I feel like that kind of was the time where things were starting to change media wise.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they were filming everything.
They had Webisode Wednesdays.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were one of the first people to do that.
Yes, exactly.
And it was a thing. And it was nobody else was doing it.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
I know.
I haven't thought about that stuff in a really long time.
And what's crazy, what's even more crazy about that was 15 plus years ago already? Oh my God. It's so crazy.
16.
I know.
I just
It's kind of wild, right?
I'm like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. Or I'm sorry, that was a long time ago.
I know.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, they were like the first ones to come in, and then slowly like people would just say, hey, we have this artist in town. Do you want to like do a video with them? And somehow I would convince whoever, hey, we're gonna go to a video with this person and this person. And there was a really funny one that we did where I was tired of like doing these videos in the studio, which was like in the basement of people.
Right.
So we went into Times Square with Blake Shelton, who at the time, like nobody really knew who he was. And so we did this like video thing, and then he was like, oh, can I just go interview people? And I was like, sure. And someone thought he was Billy Ray Cyrus.
Oh my God.
Like looking back now, I'm like, okay.
Right.
Like,
That's funny.
things are very different now.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we could get away with, it was all so new that you could get away with a lot.
Yeah,
in
it's
that
true.
In that space.
It's totally true. Nowadays you can't.
Oh no.
Yeah, media, all that behind the scenes and media and social media is so prominent now.
It's so prominent, and you would need
and essential,
and you would also need different. It's like you could get away with things without getting permits because people didn't know what
exactly.
They didn't know what permits you needed because they didn't understand that something was going to live on the internet. Yep. And then there were the people that didn't, and there was this window where people didn't think much of the internet. Therefore, you actually could get away with a lot because they didn't.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, whatever, that's just going on the internet.
Yeah.
Not realize what we all knew and
I
now
know.
know.
I know.
But yeah, there was this like glorious time of.
I know. It was wild because when I first started out, I posted something the other day that it's been 20 years that I've been doing this now, and it's like the first tour I ever did was Josh Groban on the Closer tour, and it was his very first tour. But back then, there was no YouTube, there was no Instagram, there was none of that yet, and it's like, but we want to have like a photographer, videographer out on the road to capture.
Yeah.
So what it was mostly like sponsorship stuff. So it was like, I forget what the sponsor was on that tour, but they were the ones that paid for the content person to be out there because you were feeding stuff back. And that's how I got the job with Keith Urban, is because AT&T was a sponsor and they wanted content to put on their like phones and their websites. It was websites back then, so it was like, it was so different then. And it was so like luxury item to have like a video or a photographer out on the road. Nowadays, it's like they would rather have a photographer, or they would rather have a photographer than a guitar player. You know what I mean?
Which is,
it's wild.
It is wild, like the volume at which people need to churn out content, which I find not even stressful for people like me and you, but like for artists, like it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the job now.
Yeah, completely.
Because 20 years ago they didn't have to do that. And nowadays it's like, in order to be relevant, you have to be posting stuff.
Completely.
So it's like having a guy or having two guys. Like Luke Combs. I mean, he's got two people out there. He's got David Bergman and I forget the other guy's name. Who is it?
Tall.
Zach.
Massey.
Zach Massey. Yeah, Zach Massey's out there. So it's like, now it's like artists have two people.
Yeah.
It's wild,
But it really isn't. I find that I spend a lot of time trying to explain to people, the difference actually, just being a photographer or just being a videographer.
Yeah.
And like how, sure, fundamentally there is overlap, but like practically, and when you're in the throes of it, it is very hard to do both.
It's very hard.
It's like,
yeah,
your brain is thinking completely different. Like, are you working on a narrative in a video, or are you just trying to capture that one moment?
Yeah, exactly.
With a still image.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. It's so true these days, because it's like there'll be people that reach out and go, "Oh, so you do photos? Well, do you do video too?
Yeah.
Or do you do video? Oh, do you do photos too? Can you snap some photos too?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you can.
You can,
but it's a lot. But you could do it.
Yeah.
It's possible. But
I find that when people ask me that, I'll say yes. Like, but I'm a photographer first.
Yeah.
And I know that there are people who are, yes, but I'm a videographer first.
Yeah.
I find that it's very hard to be equally as good at both of those.
Yeah.
Especially in the context of like going out on a tour run and trying to capture images or put together video. And nowadays it's not just, oh, we just need, a photo to post at the end of the night. It's like, oh, photos that are going to be used to promote something. Oh, we need social media clips to put into a reel. So there's so many different little nuggets that you have to get that when you're trying to combine photo and video, it's it's just a lot.
Yeah. That's what Dylan Rucker and I were talking about that, how, a lot of people that go out now to do social media or do photos and video on the road, it's like, it's really, it's this instant thing where it's like a photo during like a sound check.
Yeah.
And it's like, boom, you got to like post it then and there. And then it's like photos of the show afterwards, where the next morning an artist will post it, or they'll post it that night or something. But it's like, but the quality of stuff, it's like, I feel like some of these people can be rushed.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, well, it's more important to have whatever to post than to have like content that will last 10 or 20 years down the line. It's like, there's something about capturing moments for down the line than it is for a post tomorrow. You know what I mean? There's
definitely a difference. And very recently I've been told that, oh, don't worry about getting stuff on your camera. Like, on your phone is good. Like, when you're posting something in a reel, viewers don't care if it's like the most perfect quality. They just want to see the content, which is just hurts my soul.
I know.
I understand the context of social media. Okay. But like, hurts my soul.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so am I just shooting something on my phone? And that's okay. But then, but we need the video for, it's just, there's so many pieces.
Well, and that's the thing with what we do. There's an art to it.
Yeah.
Where picking up your phone and filming somebody walking to the stage, there's no art to that. Unless like we have our cameras and we're kind of making a little bit more of an art out of it, because it's what we can do.
Yeah.
But it's like just Joe Schmo with just an iPhone walking to the stage. There's really, it's out of frame, or it's like not framed right, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's too shaky, or it's just like all of a sudden it's all going off to the side,
I understand the need for content, and because I see different artists, the way that they are delivering content to their fans, and the way that like fans are responding, and you can really just look at how many musicians are signed because of what they've done on TikTok alone.
Yeah.
They didn't come up in Nashville by doing songwriters rounds and open mic nights.
Yeah,
or,
it's different.
But some of the, not all, but a lot of artists who, were on TikTok, so for them, it's different. For them, it's like the most natural thing to have someone with a phone and not a camera.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
I could see that.
Mixing, and then it's like, no, like, let's do things on a camera. Let's make it look a little bit nicer. And then someone's like, oh, it doesn't have to look nice.
That's an interesting perspective. I never really thought about it that way. Like, to think that, this generation of like musicians and artists coming in and actually filming themselves, that they've probably never had like a real camera in front of them. So that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild. I never even thought about that.
And I think maybe they've had some of them may have had a real camera, but I think that some people are so used to phones are getting better and better. They're still not cameras, but they're getting better and better, but they're just still used to the phone.
Yeah.
And they haven't experienced someone like you or myself or any of the other photographers that you're interviewing who come into it from a more artistic standpoint.
Yes.
Of like capturing a moment.
Yes.
Because like, that's how I look at it. Like, you're capturing a moment.
Yeah.
A photo is a moment that lives on.
Exactly.
Like, any famous photo that you love is a split-second moment. Like the Muhammad Ali, like that photo of him.
Yep.
That is a split-second moment that lives
on.
It's
iconic.
It is iconic and it lives on.
Yep.
And to me, that's the magic of a photo over video. But that's just me.
Yeah.
That's just me. I like both, and I think video is wonderful and also wildly important.
Yeah.
Just think about how, like, you and I love finding random old footage that on YouTube of like a concert from like 1975, and you're like, totally. Oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Like, but the single frame to me is what's like what you can capture in a single frame.
What photographers do you look up to?
Well, I used to the idea of being a fly on the wall and just like not in a creepy way, but just capturing people in their authentic state. So like when Annie would do photos for Rolling Stone and go on tour with people, to me it sounds cheesy, but like just getting to observe. No one's paying attention to me, me the photographer. My job is just to document, and I think they are without a doubt the most authentic photos you'll ever capture.
100%.
When someone you're working with is so comfortable that they aren't even aware that the cameras are around.
Exactly. Those are the best ones.
Those are the best ones.
Those are the best ones because there was a moment, there was a memory I have of when I was out on tour with Josh Groban. We did we did shows in South Africa, and we did this thing where he went and met Nelson Mandela,
That's
and
cool.
like all these like really cool things down there. And at the end of the African portion of our trip, he kind of like looked at me and goes, "Oh, you were here?" You know, and that's like the best. That's like the best compliment.
Best compliment.
Because it's like, that's my job. I
Yeah.
just accomplished that because I captured everything, but him not knowing about it.
Yeah.
In a good way, not in a creepy way, but in a great way. You know, so that was like the best. Like that's one of the best compliments you could get. You know.
Anytime someone says that to me, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know you were there. Oh, wow, that like little snippet to me.
Yeah.
Best.
Exactly.
I was like, that's right, you didn't know I was there.
Exactly.
But I mean, those were the images like I saw initially
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
And why I initially picked up a camera and like to take pictures of my friends all
Yeah.
the time. And
So how long have you been in Nashville for?
so I left people in 2015 and came down here.
Gotcha.
Quit and was like, I'm going to go try being a photographer. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
But again, like I had the...
It went very well, by the way.
Thank you.
Keep going.
It's going. So again, like I had this like kind of unfair advantage of having known so many artists
Right.
from like the People days. For example, Luke Bryan's manager, Carrie Edwards, when it was 2010. You'll appreciate this. 2010, I talked my way into coming to CMA Fest. And they're like, have you ever done video? I was like, no. They're like, here's a camera. And I'm like, okay. I had no idea what I was doing. Okay. But like I could email anybody and say, hey, we're going to do a little video for people.com. So Luke, I'm sure was signed, but there's footage somewhere of like me in the back of Carrie Edwards' car interviewing Luke, like holding like a camera.
Amazing.
There's some really old Eric Church footage of me asking some questions that I'm embarrassed. I found it once and I was like, those are really embarrassing questions. They were like, I was told to ask some specific
Right,
questions.
right.
But yeah, that was like the first time someone handed me a video camera and said, go. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And they were like, think beginning, middle, end of a
Right,
video. Because
yeah.
to me, everything was a still image.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I will say, when I'm doing videos, a lot of times I still think like that.
Wow.
Like,
But that's good though.
it is, except that like
Yeah.
a lot of videos now don't need that narrative.
Yeah,
It's just
it's true.
like, oh, just like a bunch of different cuts
That
from a
is
weekend
true.
on tour.
Yeah.
And that actually, it took me a long time to like untrain my brain that there needed
Yeah.
to be a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember there was one time when I was working for Keith Urban, one of the managers was like, she said, just don't shoot it perfectly. Don't be
Yeah.
perfect. You know, don't worry about being perfect. You know, just shoot stuff. You know, but then that would, like you said, you had to like kind of retrain your brain.
Yeah.
I had to do the same thing because when I first started this, it's like I wanted to be perfect. I wanted it to be great.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the whole goal. That's the passion behind it all.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like, yeah, it was like a retraining of that. You know.
There's a lot that I had to like retrain on that. But yeah, so when I got to Nashville, it was more of like letting people know that I'm here and that I wanted to not just do things for people. Because
Yeah.
I was still doing a little freelancing, but I wanted to get hired. I wanted to go on tour. I wanted to experience
So
that.
you wanted to go on tour.
I did, but I didn't want to tour full time.
Yeah.
There was two things. I wanted to tour, and it was kind of like a check off the lifelong to-do list.
Yeah.
If I had gotten to Nashville in my early 20s, I would have signed up for a full-time touring gig.
Really.
Yeah. But I wasn't. I was in my early
Yeah.
30s when I got here, so I
Yeah.
didn't want to be gone all the time.
Yeah.
And the flip side of it was one of the things I did at People was photo editor during award show nights. So I would see all the portrait studios come in,
Yeah.
and I would see the photos, and that was where I started seeing what other people were doing for portrait studios,
Yeah.
and where I was like, oh, but I could do something like this, or like that's where my brain
Right.
started thinking about the portrait
Yeah.
studio. So those were two things that coming in, I wanted to do both.
Yeah.
And it was a matter of like finding artists that were okay without a full-time person, and then convincing someone to let me do some cockamamie portrait studio.
Yeah.
And just be like,
Do you
trust me,
think-
it'll work.
Do you think it was hard back then to find somebody that they didn't want to have like a full time? Because I feel like nowadays it's like you got to be full time. We want to have you all the time.
I know
you
that
know?
a lot of people do want a full-time person nowadays. I think it was just like a matter of connecting with the right people
Yeah.
early on. And with artists that were not the headliners.
Yeah.
Because the headliners were going to have a full-time
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be with the headliner. That was because I also knew being with the headliner meant I was gone all the time, and I didn't want that.
True.
So I was totally fine being with an opener because I was still getting the experience.
Yeah.
There was still a lot that I had to learn about the whole touring aspect of being a touring photographer.
Yeah. What was your first tour?
My first tour was with Ray Lynn. I flew out to meet them in like Seattle. She was opening for Blake. I think she was the first opener. I think there was someone in between. I don't remember who that was. And so I went out with her a couple of times. I'm trying to think the first couple artists. I did like a weekend with Kelsey. I did a weekend with Danielle Bradbury. A few weekends with Carly Pierce. I'm trying to think who else. I think that was for the first couple of years. And it might be like I went out twice a year and that was it.
Yeah.
In the beginning, which was fine. Like I didn't,
So
like it scratched the itch. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah. So with Ray Lynn being the first tour, was it like a bus tour?
Yeah. I think everyone was on one bus.
Gotcha.
And I never maybe I bussed out once, but a lot of it was I would fly out to meet them where they were, do 2 or 3 nights.
What'd you think of the bus?
I think I still had this like, oh, I'm actually going on tour as a photographer. This is really great.
Right.
This is what I've always wanted. Let me go experience it. So I had no problems with the bus. Like I knew.
Because I feel like everybody's kind of got their own like first bus story, you know, of like when they get on the road.
2 things. I get on the bus and they're like, oh, have you ever been on a bus before? I was like, no. They're like, well, there's 2 important things. Your head goes at the back and don't poop.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah.
Those were the only 2 rules. And I was like, tracks.
Yeah. Do you seem to think that you sleep better on a bus or
Oh
at
my
home?
God. Okay. This is how I explain bus sleep to people.
Right.
Okay. People are like, oh God, it must be so hard to sleep on a bus. And I'm like, hold my beer. And I explain, and a lot of people who have kids, I'm like, you know, like that bassinet, the snoo, and it's basically this like automated bassinet that like when the baby starts crying, it automatically like vibrates and whatever, does something. I was like, the bus is an adult snoo. I don't have a kid, but I know that the bus is an adult snoo because it's like you're in this like cold area, but you're tucked in with this cozy blanket. You have your own vents. There's a little bit of the vibration. It's dark and cozy. Like as long as you got a good bus driver, like that generator goes.
Yep, exactly.
That's how I describe it.
I get better sleeps on the bus than I do at home. I
can sleep 8 hours straight without waking up. It is lovely.
The moment I get in my bunk and close that thing, I'm
asleep.
out. I'm done. Within 5 minutes, I'm out.
I
don't know what it is. It's just got to be the motion. It's got to be the rocking and all that, you know.
In my opinion, is like the best. Yeah, it is the best sleep ever.
Yeah.
I don't like being on the top, but I've gotten
I'm on the top.
Well,
I used to be on the bottom because I feel like that was kind of the center of gravity, you know, on a bus. So you're not too much motion, but on top you kind of get a little more of that. I feel like. It's like the rolling out of it, and then I have to climb down. Not all of us are 6 foot a lot. Some of us are 5 foot short. Right.
But yeah. The bottom's like a real cozy spot for me that I've gotten into.
So what was it like the first weekend out on the road?
I mean,
because it was something that you wanted to do.
It was
and
something.
It was like, it's got to be exciting.
It was wildly exciting, and there was so much I didn't know what to expect, and so I kind of just like went with the flow. Like I didn't need a schedule as long as like, I mean, a schedule's lovely, but like, tell me where you need me to be. What do you need?
Yeah.
And it's also like, well, when do you want photos, or do you want photos of this? And learning, it was the start of like learning where to go and take photos and where not to take photos, and how to be with an opener.
Yeah.
And
because there's rules.
There's rules.
And a lot of people don't know that. Like if they're on tour with a major act, the major act makes rules. Yeah. What an opening act can't do.
Yeah.
And some of that bleeds over into photography and videography.
Oh, totally.
You know, it's like you can't shoot that, you can't shoot this, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
You know.
And just knowing how to interact with like crews from other artist camps.
Yeah. Yep.
And being respectful and knowing your place, and not in like a bad way, just knowing your place. And but honestly, like it sounds funny, but my most vivid memory is your head goes here and don't poop.
Yeah.
That was it. After show food was a new thing. I didn't realize like after show food was such a thing.
Eating at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. That's good until it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, can we get a big plate of fruit? I don't need the Chipotle, but can we get the big plate of fruit?
I was actually on a tour once that they didn't have after show food just because of that reason. They were just like, no, we're not going to do after show food on this bus just because, it's just not healthy.
Yeah, it's always been like wildly unhealthy. But depending if you're like in a cool city, sometimes they'll be like, oh, we're in this city, we're going to get this like.
Oh yeah, like we're going to get In-N-Out. We're going to get Whataburger. All that California, Texas.
I think that first Raylan tour we went to Portland, and so someone was like, "Here, all these voodoo donuts," because the voodoo donuts are a big thing out there.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's fun. That I appreciate. I appreciate when we're somewhere fun and like.
I feel like I always find voodoo donuts in some production office whenever we're playing in Oregon. Mm-hmm. It's always there.
I think there's one at BNA now.
Is there really?
Yeah, I think so.
A voodoo donuts at the airport in Nashville?
Don't quote me on that, please.
Ooh. Don't
quote me.
Do they have one, Dylan?
I don't know.
Huh. Interesting. Huh.
I'll be at the airport tomorrow. I'll let you know.
Keep me posted.
No, yeah, tomorrow. But yeah, I think I was really happy to be out that first time. It was very much like, oh, this is what I came here to do. I'm actually doing it.
Yeah. And what a tour though too, like a Blake tour.
Yeah, it was a big production.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was a really big production. It was also the first time that I was with an artist where it wasn't expected, but I could say, hey, let's try this and go do this.
Yeah.
Let's go try and do some quick portraits here. Oh, we need some videos. Let's try and do things like this. I was also still learning the video aspect to an extent.
Yeah.
Learning how to edit. I mean, I already knew how to edit video by that point. I learned that while I was still at People, but I still wasn't as efficient. And inevitably, I'd look at all these other artists and the videos coming out of those camps with guys who probably were video first before they were photo.
Right.
Like, I knew that, and it didn't really bother me. Like the photos has always been like my holy grail.
Yeah.
So being comfortable saying photo, you're not.
Yeah.
There are people that do some insane weekend recaps.
Oh,
like that's just not where my skill set lies.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you find that like whenever you're doing stuff for People and then going out on the road, like, because I feel like when you're on the road, the artists want turnaround so fast of things.
Yeah.
Was it like that at People? Is it like super fast like that? Did that?
No, but this was a different time. This was like 2015. So yes, in the sense that on an award show night, we would edit photos.
Yeah.
They would come in immediately. There was like a whole system there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the beginning of where it's wildly different from where it is now, where I first started getting the sense of what a workflow should look like for delivering the portrait photos that I do now. Because like the portrait studio would, at the Golden Globes or the Grammys, would upload photos to us and we would have to then put them up.
Yeah.
So that type of speed, and maybe that was unique for the time. And there, I guess looking back now, there was a lot that was unique about when I was at people.com, because from the time that I was hired there in 2006 to when I left in 2015, it really was like this arc of, they would do, I think, this is definitely wrong, but 10 news stories a day to like 50 news stories a day. And Star Tracks, which was like that main photo thing, I think would be updated 3 days a week to being updated twice a day.
Yeah.
So you really did see the speed of photos. And once people, internet connections got faster, which is wild to say, like, in 2006 or 2010, but they did.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like too, like, photos 20 years ago, it'd be like, oh, in a couple days it came out and you're like, that was current. But nowadays it's like,
now it's like
you put something out an hour ago and it's old news.
Old news. Yeah. I would say more and more recently people want photo. Like in the very beginning, they didn't necessarily want them as fast as they do now.
Yeah.
But also like Instagram and TikTok wasn't around.
Yeah.
But social media has changed.
Yeah, 100%. It's changed a lot in the last 5 years.
That alone is the reason people want things so fast, so they can remain relevant. So fans can see, oh, this happened tonight. I want to buy a ticket for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, makes complete sense.
100%.
From like a management artist perspective.
Yeah.
Nothing about these requests don't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it's hard, and yes, I've had to work and figure out my own kind of workflow of how do I get people photos as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So, and this is like nitty gritty, but like I like to get an artist a couple photos that night.
Yeah.
Sometimes the easiest way to do it for me is to, as I'm shooting, mark like 2 or 3 in camera that I know will be good.
Yeah.
That I know will are dynamic, they're great. I'll want to go through more. But like if right after the show they're like, hey, I really want to post a photo, I'd be like, okay, here's one. Because at least, you know, there's something going up.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like maybe more, or they'll post that in their stories, and then in the morning they'll do like a carousel in a post.
Yeah.
But that's even up until recently. I've been working on like, what does that flow look like to get at least 1 or 2 photos out that night efficiently?
Yeah.
Because
what is your workflow?
What is my workflow?
Yeah.
Great question, Jeff Johnson. Great question. So if I'm talking just from a photo standpoint, there's some artists I work with that I know would like a sound check photo, and there's some artists that I know don't want a sound check photo.
Yeah.
So maybe if I'm doing video, I'll shoot video at sound check, but I'll do like cutaways, like someone's hands, because it doesn't matter what the band or the artist looks like during sound check, their hands is like a nice cutaway and things like that. And then there's some artists where right before they go on, like if there's like a 5-minute window, I'll be like, hey, there's a spot here. Let's go do some photos real quick.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's like the opportunity to do a quick portrait. And anyone I work with, it's like, hey, we try things. Some things work and some things don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Some things have turned into single artwork.
Yeah.
Some things just like never see the light of day.
Yeah.
Some things turn into random. One of my favorite photos from last year, I think I was in Nebraska with John Party, and we were like in the middle of nowhere, but they had these really cool old school bleachers, and I like somehow convinced him and the band. I was like, guys, we gotta get dressed like 5 minutes early. We're gonna do something of y'all standing on those bleachers. It's just, and it's one of my favorite photos. It's like all of them, and they're dressed, and it's like kind of from far away.
Yeah.
It's a little Breakfast Clubby in a way, and stuff like that. Like I get so excited about. I'm like, I'm gonna edit this really quickly.
Yeah.
But
and that's the great thing about the road. You go to so many places that you would never see, and like you find locations that are like, holy shit, this is awesome. And let's shoot here. You know,
and you can attest to this, but I feel like that's the benefit of like developing a really wonderful rapport with an artist, because it doesn't always work, and there's some things that also have to happen that day. But if they trust you and they trust the way that you work
100%.
and like your ideas, to say, hey, there's this place like 10 minutes from here, like I think we should go there and just try something. Or like I run around a venue when I get there.
Yeah.
In the mornings when you wake up and see where you are.
Yeah.
Say, where's the coffee? Where's the bathroom? You know. But if there's something unique and I see it early, like first thing I'll say, hey, if you know there's time between meet and greet and the show before warm-ups, like if you're dressed, let's go do this. And that to me is because I do like little quick portraits, and I find that a lot of artists, if it's not like this like big massive production, but it's like a quick, you can get like great quick portrait that if you understand, if you don't need all the lights, you know how to work with what your available light is, or like you bring a little bit on the road. Sometimes I'll bring a little bit on the road if I see where we're going. I'll be like, and look up if there's something nearby. Maybe. But that's really fun.
It's really funny that you say that, because there's a story that when I was out on the road with Chris Young, Dylan over here could contest to this too, but we had the plan of doing a kind of just like a small video for a Chris Young and Jimmy Allen song called Music Note. And we were actually bringing Dylan in to shoot it. And we were shooting somewhere in California. I forget where it was in California, Northern California or something. And Dylan got COVID and he couldn't go. So it was one of those moments of like, okay, we're in this city and we're in this like kind of farm area with bleachers and like a racetrack, an old just crazy racetrack. And I'm like, shit, let's just film a video here. So I take it to Chris, and Chris like, yeah, let's go. And Jimmy was like, yeah, let's go. So we ended up shooting the whole Music Note video, one camera, no lights, no crew, no nothing. I was supposed to have him on board, but he was sick. So, but it's moments like that. You know, it's like, you never know. And we shot a whole music video in an hour. You know, that was on Vivo and all that stuff. You know, it's like, you just never know.
You have to be flexible, and you have to. It's one thing to just, you're out there to like take photos of a live show, but when you're able to conceptualize and see what's available to you, that, oh, we don't have anything like that at home. Let's go do this. You know, if you have earned the trust from the artist or the camp, I find in my experience, unless there's a logistical reason, I pretty much always get a yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because we get to kind of step out of the live show photo, and we get to kind of be a little creative differently
Yeah.
out on the road, because you think when you're out on the road, it's just all about live shows.
Yeah, and it's
But
not.
why not like take advantage of the
Yeah.
day when the artist isn't doing much?
Yeah.
And let's go and shoot some stuff. you
I've
know?
been sent out before specifically with the request of, hey, we're going to have you go do the live show, but we also need to get a couple of quick portraits. Lauren
Yeah.
Elena, UMG sent me out, and they were like, hey, she's got some shows. Let's get some live stuff. Also, we really need to get one or two single, which literally, whatever is available to us is what we do. And I actually like that. As long as the artist is on board.
Yeah.
I like that because, again, it's not as stressful because there's not this massive production.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't mind when that's requested of me.
And it's a little more organic too, I feel like, with the artist. It's just a little more, not intimate, but just kind of like...
No, that's the right word. I think it's organic, but I do think it's more intimate.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to be photographed and have like all these people on a set looking at you. If it's just you and a photographer and maybe like one or two other people to like hold something.
Yeah. And that goes back to that trust,
you're
too.
Be exactly like you're the artist themselves is going to be more relaxed.
Yeah.
You asked about my workflow.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
So I
want to know.
I know. Then you have to tell me yours.
Okay, so the show is over.
The show is over.
What do you do?
The show is over is I will immediately go back to my laptop and dump my photos immediately. Get everything dumped. I have a weird way of renaming. I rename my files just in Apple because I mix cameras.
Right.
So every file gets renamed with like the date, the artist, and the location or event.
Yeah.
And then 1, 2, 3, just so that is easily searchable forever.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I pull into Lightroom, and if I've marked the things that I've marked,
Yeah.
I always go back there. If that frame isn't the one, normally like there's something around it.
Yeah.
So if I have to get something out immediately,
Then you go to that first.
I go to those I've starred in camera.
Yeah.
The starring in camera has made things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because even if I'm shooting at the soundboard and I'm walking around, I can like walk around and kind of like do it as I go to get to the next spot.
That's smart. I've never done that. I've never done it like that.
Yeah, it has helped me for like the night of getting photos out.
Yeah. That's actually a great idea.
That's really helped.
I may have to steal that from you.
Please do.
Because I've never done that. I mean, well, and continue, because I want to hear more of like, so now obviously you've gotten to those photos that you've picked throughout a show.
Yeah. And then I'll start doing a larger call.
Gotcha.
And I like have like a marking system, like things I like, and then I go through all of those, and then I work my way down.
Yeah.
And then I'll like.
And then you just submit them all to like the artist or management, or depending on who the artist is, obviously.
Most of the artists I work with, I'll just send to them. Sometimes I'll go sit on their bus and like airdrop them a bunch.
Yeah.
A big thing for me with working with an artist, and even artists that I've been working with a really long time, and I think this is just like being sensitive to things that they like.
Yeah.
The first time I work with an artist, the first thing I'm going to ask them is like, what do you like? But even more specifically, what don't you like?
Exactly.
Sometimes it's hard for people to say, I really like this. But if you ask someone what don't they like, they will tell you immediately.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
So even at this point with the artists I work with, I've spent a lot of time working very hard to remember they like this side, they like that side. They are sensitive to this, they are sensitive to that. Oh, they like these angles, they like these types of shots.
Yeah.
So I might have culled down to 10 or 15 photos.
Yeah.
And when they say, oh, I kind of don't like that one, even now I will say, oh, what don't you like about it?
Yeah.
And it doesn't make me feel bad when they don't like a photo.
Yeah.
Like, I might like it,
Yeah.
but that doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's about the artist.
It's about the artist, but I want to know why you don't like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the more times the more times you tell me what you don't like, and the more things I can tick off the list.
Yeah.
Like,
that's smart,
does that make
because
sense?
yeah, no, totally. Because I feel like that's good for people that are just starting in this business
Yeah.
too. Because they could just get a camera and go out and shoot and not know.
Yeah.
But it's like to have that kind of knowledge from either the artist or management,
Yeah.
Is so key, because for one, it saves you the time.
You're going to shoot angles that they will never post a photo from.
Exactly. Because it's like, there are certain artists that, obviously a lot of the artists don't shoot below me, and if you do, shoot it wide.
Yeah.
Don't shoot tight from underneath, but it's like, those are like little gems that the artist and management will give to a photographer. And that's key. I feel like that's an important thing for like these young kids, because they'll just go and they'll just shoot and it just doesn't matter. But, oh man, the photo looks great to them, but the artist may hate it.
So you kind of hit the nail on the head, because I think, especially if you're young, you're new, you're working with a new artist, I think if you show interest in catering to them,
Yeah.
then they are more like, that just makes a better relationship.
Yeah.
And then you do get to the point where you're like, I know they don't normally like this photo, but I think they might like this one. And so I'll put it into the group that I send over.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing it might get killed.
Yeah.
But like, once you've earned that trust of making sure that there are plenty of options in that group of, these are things that the artist likes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can
There's
add.
There's so many times that I've shot Carrie photos that I've turned in that I'm like, oh, she'll probably never use that.
Yeah.
And then she uses it as like the first photo.
Right.
And I'm like, wait, what?
That happens to me sometimes. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you? And how excited do you get?
Extremely.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'll turn in a ton of photos every night for her, and then it's like I'll see the post and go, and I kind of almost make a bet with myself of like what she will and won't post.
Yeah.
Because normally she'll do like 10.
Yeah.
And she chooses them.
Yeah.
She wants to post what she wants to post, but it's like I'll turn in like 50.
Yeah.
Because you never know. They may save them for down the line or whatever for promo or whatever. But it's like, it's kind of like a little game that I play, the next day when I see them.
I mean, you're not wrong. I kind of do the same thing.
Right.
And when I get one in that I love, and then every once in a while I'm like, oh my God, I wish they had posted
I
one other.
I know. That's happened a lot.
Yeah.
That has happened a lot. Because there's some I'm like, that'll be the number one. And then it was like not even in there.
It'll never see the light of day.
Exactly.
It will live on my hard drive till the end of time.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's funny. I had that same thought and I played that same game. I'm like, maybe I can.
So now the end of the night, you've turned in all your photos. You're done.
Yeah, if I've gotten through them by the end of the night.
Yeah.
Normally, depending on what time we end, what time the bus has to leave.
Yeah. Do you ever edit on the bus at all?
So the only place I can edit on the bus is if I'm sitting at the front of the bus in the jump seat next to the driver at night.
Gotcha.
Because daytime it's way too bright.
Yeah.
The seats on the bus, like by the tables, you don't have this problem, but I do. They're too high. Like I sometimes will go get like pillows from the junk bunk and sit them, and so I can during the day so I can sit up higher. Right. But they're like this weird height that I'm like it's very uncomfortable. But at the end, I try to get cold through everything at the end of the night. So even if like I've gotten the artist a couple of photos were good, I still need to go through the whole evening, the whole live show, and sometimes I will edit. On a good day, sound check, I'll edit. Some other things, I'll edit. Some things I can do throughout the day. But I try to not get into my bunk until I've culled everything. Yeah. So I've already sent the artist some photos. So maybe it's like 1 or 2 a.m. I've gone through everything. So all I have to do is wake up the next morning and go to however many that I've starred to go back to, edit them quickly, and then send them on. Yeah. Yeah. But that's what I try to get done by the end of the night. And it just depends. Like some days I shoot more. Sometimes, just...
How many photos do you think you shoot per show? I mean, we all know it because we all look at the count at the end.
Really,
I would love to know this because I think I'm going to ask
I want to say
everybody.
Like 1,800. David Bergman's, by the way, is so high. When you ask him, oh my God, he's just so high. And he culls through them. I think
mine is like 25.
So I get up. I would like to be at 18, but I end up at 25. And sometimes I go back and forth on if I'm shooting 2 cameras. A lot of times I do, or I'll just like throw a lens in and just toggle. Yeah. But that's sometimes dependent upon whether or not I'm shooting video and photo at the same time. Yeah.
Do you usually use 2 cameras during a concert shoot? Yeah. You do? Yeah. Gotcha. Is it, and you obviously you have like this lens on that one and this lens on that, like a 70 to 200 and like,
Yep. And I'll just, so I don't have to mess with them. And then I have like other lenses that I like to play around with. Like, and I'm sure a lot of people will say this, but I think one of the most challenging things, and perhaps one of the best things you learn going on the road, is how to shoot the same set, or not always the same, but a very similar set every night, but still make unique photos. And I think that's I think it's actually one of the best lessons you could learn. Yeah. Because like you have to learn how to look at something differently. So, for example, like once I get my shots and I know I'm good, I'm like, what can I play around with? What can I? I want to try some new things. I've got this. I love my prime. My 50 prime is like my child. It's my workhorse. I love just shooting on that. Yeah. But it's hard to do for a whole show. Yeah. Or I have this like a random really wide 20 lens sometimes that I'll play around with. Once I've gotten the other photos, I am like, where have I not stood for a shot? Yeah. What do I not think about? Yeah. Where does the light hit differently that I haven't captured a different kind of flare? And I spend a lot of time doing that. I also spend a lot of time, there are different artists that whether or not they're holding a guitar or not holding a guitar is when I know the best shots are.
Yeah.
Are they right in front of a microphone like this? Are they to the side? Where do they lean?
Yeah.
So when I work with an artist for the first time, I will take a set list and I'll make notes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll sit with a guitar tech and I'll say which songs do they have a guitar? Which songs do they not have a guitar?
Yeah.
Because there's a huge difference to the type of photos you're going to get.
Yeah.
And not like this.
Yeah. I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. 100%. Because I feel like there is an element of study to get a shot, because especially if you're shooting a show like the same show for 45 shows, you know, that my routine in the morning, whenever we go into an arena, I walk the arena and I sit in the arena and I just kind of like scope out areas, you know, as they're building stuff on the floor, you know, because I want to know, like, okay, can I walk up this thing? Because in some hockey rinks, you can't walk up this way. You have to go this way. And then in that moment, I will sit there and have a coffee and I'll sit there and go, okay, what did I shoot last night? What lens did I use? Where was I? How much further can I move over to get a different kind of shot? You know, I feel like, you know, Carrie's show in Vegas, it's a flat show. Like, and when I mean flat show, I mean, you're just looking at a show. There's no ramp. There's no side angles. There's none of that.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
So you're literally shooting just a theater show.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So like when we did the Denim and Rhinestones tour, it was out. You know, this huge ramp came all the way out. She did this acrobatic thing that went out to this. You're good. She did this acrobatic thing that went all the way out to a B stage. You know, and there were so many different like angles and stuff like that. So it's like, I have to sit there and think in my head, I'm like, okay, what did I get last night and what did I get the night before? So there's a study to it too. You know, I feel like, you know, that just like, okay, how do I make it better for tonight? You know?
Do you ever find that there's a shot like you want to nail and you'll miss it one night and you'll be like, oh my God, and I want to try and nail it the next night, but like there'll be some minor detail and change in variable that makes it so that I can't get that shot that night. And then I'll go, okay, but if it's like a 3-night run, okay, I got one more shot. There's this shot I really want to get. And like to your point, sometimes there are a lot of changing variables. Sometimes there aren't. And it could be like the littlest changing variable that I was like.
That is why I will never shoot weddings. One shot. That's all you got. Concert. Oh, I missed it last night. I'll get it tonight. Can't do that in a wedding.
I've done some city hall weddings for friends,
you know,
which I enjoyed because it was more documentary. But yeah, no, you get one shot. I mean, I love a 3-night run.
Because you have 3 shots. You have 3 chances.
You get 3 chances to like nail the shots that you want to nail.
Exactly.
And sometimes the artist is in a different mood one weekend than the next weekend, or they start moving around the stage differently, and there'll be a shot. I'll go to one side because I'm like, oh, the last time I was out, you know, this I missed the shot. This is the side to be on. But you could go out in that Thursday night show. They're on the other side of the stage. They decided to do something different. And another thing too, I always love to shoot a lot on the first night because I feel like the artist has had their time, their break. You know, during the week. And it's like they're fresh and pumped back up again. Where it's like the third show of the weekend, they're kind of like, we just want to get home. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, it's just kind of like going through the motions and they're just done. You know, I want to go home. There's no doubt about that.
But it's like, I feel like there's always like this big energy on the first night of a weekend. I don't know, for some reason.
I agree with that.
So.
Wait, I want to go back real quick. You're done editing all of your photos that night. What time do you go to bed?
Well, let's see. Like, I'm trying to think like what I could kind of base off of. If I base off of working with Carrie.
Not the Vegas tour. Not touring.
Not the Vegas. So actual touring.
Was actual touring.
So touring, you know, she would be done off stage at 10:30, I think, every night. And I would have to kind of pack up my stuff. And during that, all my photos would be downloading.
That's what I do. I try to get my Pelican packed up before everything's finished downloading. So everything's downloading. But the thing is like we left always really fast after the show to get to the next city because some of our buses needed to get out because the production was so massive that trucks had to come in and we had to move out of the way and we had to get to the next city and stuff like that. So I would end up doing a lot of editing in the back of the bus, which is very difficult because you're moving. I don't know how you do that.
You know, and it's like I use a mouse with editing and stuff like that. And it's like when you're bouncing around and all this and the computer's doing this.
I don't know how you do that.
But I would probably I don't know. I'd be probably on the bus by like 11:30. I think we rolled every night, and then I'd probably be done with editing photos about 1:30.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah. So it takes me about 2 hours.
Yeah, that's
to go
fine.
through everything.
Yeah.
And especially with somebody like Carrie, where there's wardrobe changes.
Yeah.
And then there's different wardrobe every night.
Yeah.
So it's different every night.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Which I feel like must be fun.
so much fun.
Like to have that many changes in a show. And I also think it's fun from a costume and like outfit standpoint.
See, I figured you would love that because
I mean, I've never shot a show like that where there were like that many outfit changes where it's like, how is the outfit hitting whatever sparkles, or like what's the dynamic shot of an outfit where it's a flowy skirt, or what's the dynamic, do you know what I mean? The different elements of the fabrics.
Totally.
So I think that would be so fun.
Yeah. It was honestly, the Denim and Rhinestones tour is probably one of my most favorite tour I've ever done.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because like, I mean, obviously where Carrie is, just career wise, icon.
Yeah.
Icon.
Oh, completely.
I mean, that is icon status.
Yeah.
And just the songs, the fans, it's all different kinds of fans. It's like all the young kids that she had as fans in American Idol, or they're all grown adults with kids that are now their age, when she won American Idol, all that. But what I loved about that show so much was the fire and just everything about it was just so good.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun to photograph and video.
Yeah.
Dylan came out and he shot 3 shows with me, and he was just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
You had so many elements to work with.
So many.
Yeah.
So many. But, like with a show like that, I get a little, like there's times like her production is so massive that, I don't go on stage much because you really can't.
You will be set on fire.
You will be set on fire. Exactly. So you got to be really careful with that too.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's another thing for young photographers and videographers that go on the road with maybe a big artist that has that, there is that element of, having to have that conversation with the stage manager or production manager of like, yo, what's happening here? I don't want to get fried, and you got to know those things.
I think the more you ask people about things like that, especially like the more helpful the stage crew is going to be to get that shot. I also, in my experience, there's 1, 2, 3 good shots from the stage.
Yeah.
And and it's good to know that, but I don't think the best shots necessarily come from stage. And I think sometimes people are like, I have to be on the stage to get this shot. Well, there's a lot going on the stage.
Yeah.
The few times I do go on, I'm very conscious of where the band is.
Yeah.
Because I want to be on the stage for as little amount of time as possible.
Yeah.
I time it to like a certain song or a certain beat where I know the lights are going to hit, or the artist turns around sometimes at the song. Maybe they'll turn around at this part.
Yeah.
But I don't think just waiting around on the stage. I think some people get excited about doing that, but that you go up. I think those shots need to be planned.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be.
Yeah.
If you're hide as well as you can.
Yeah.
Make sure your clothes
Yeah.
are black.
Yep. Exactly.
Go in for your shot. Yes, you might pop into behind the spotlight. That's fine, but do it for 3 seconds. Get your shot and move on.
Yeah.
Because you're only going to get so many. They're not going to be. It's going to be the same shot.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So get it and move on.
Yeah. Exactly. Do you think that's the same with like kind of video? Because I mean, you could do like video.
I think video's different.
Video's different.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think video's different. Like video, sometimes I will stand on like the side of the stage, so what I think is challenging doing both photo and video. The artist doesn't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
They don't know if you're doing video or photo. So they'll do something towards you and you'll be like, or they'll do something and you're like, this is a zoom lens. Like you just came here, nothing was shot. Like
exactly.
Great.
Using like a 70-200 on the side of the stage.
And they're like right in your face. And you're like, that was fun. Or like, hey, afterwards, like, oh, did you get that shot where I was like, and I'm like, and you kind of like, let me change the subject a little bit. And I actually think that happens, and I think it's hysterical.
Yeah.
At least I have to think it's hysterical because it happens.
Yeah. It was really funny. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I posted this thing on my Instagram the other day where it was like a video guy, the life of videographer or videographer or whatever, where he walks up to these people and he's filming, but they're all posing for a photo. Yeah. Do you see that, Dylan? I posted. It's so true, because it's like you're walking up, because it looks like a still shot camera, but then you're up there and you're filming and you're like posing for a photo.
So
accurate.
More recently, a problem, I want to say an interesting challenge I've had is that I'll be in the crowd trying to get shots of the artist, and people in the crowd are like, take my picture, and I'll have like a 70-200 on, or there's no flash, the light's not being like I can't, and I try to be so nice. I'm like, I'm so sorry, like I don't have the right lens, I don't have a flash, and they'll be like, but we came from so far away. I'm like, I know, I'm really sorry, like unfortunately, like my camera can't do that. So like, but we came, and it goes on, and it's you can't get me, like you have to just like
I've had that happen so many times. You
can't be mean, because then they're like, oh, so-and-so's photographer. And I'll be like, over and over, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then the people that, I don't know if you have this problem, but the number of people that put their hands in front of my lens when I'm pushing through a crowd.
I know.
And
or the people that jump in front of your camera because they're drunk and just like, that's all they know how to do.
It is wild.
I know, right? It's like you're getting this killer shot, and all of a sudden you just see this shirtless guy just like in front of your camera dancing. That
has happened more recently, and I'm like, I thought we were past this.
Right.
I thought we were past this, but I would say all shows I've shot for the past you gotta be like so nice to people, which is great. You want to be nice to them, but it's like, you can profusely apologize about how I'm so sorry I can't take your photo.
And it's like, how am I going to get that photo to you?
Yeah.
It's like, where's that photo going to live?
Exactly.
Where's it going?
But people in the crowd, if there are any music fans watching, please don't put your hand in front of a photographer's lens.
Right.
It's not funny.
Exactly.
It's not cute.
It is not.
You will never see that photo.
Right.
That has been happening more and more recently, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Like,
okay, so there is one thing that I would definitely want to talk to you about.
Okay,
because
you definitely want to talk about
what you do for the CMA stuff is unbelievable.
Thank you.
Honestly, like every time, and it's funny because Dylan Rucker and I were talking about it, and it's like, he even said it. He goes, whenever I see a Katie photo, I know it's her. because of like, the effort and the eye that you put into and the creativity that you put into it, it is insane. Like some of these setups, like I'm actually like stoked to see like what comes out of like the CMA red carpet stuff that you do when it all comes out, because it's so creative. I want to know, like, obviously when you started with CMA and doing that, and take me through like the process, because I've seen some of the stuff on Instagram where you've gone through like the whole process and stuff.
Yeah.
But I need to like hear it from you.
Okay.
Like, how does it all work?
So I can tell you how it all started. It all started in 2008. I think that's when it was. Yeah. And again, I think I told you, so like at People, I would see the portrait studios, and I kind of always felt like they were a little bit flat, and that it really just looked like it was a different person in the same exact space.
Right.
And and even then I understood the limitations that someone would be working with. But I like in my head, I was like, I have to believe that there is another way, that things can look a little bit different and still be as quick. So that was the first one I did was this gold records design. And I kind of like sent like this Hail Mary email to.
Was that the one with all the albums?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean? It was just gold records that we spray painted. Yeah. And I had like done this. I rendered it out. I gave examples. To put a whole design board together. And I said, this is what I think would be really wonderful. We could do it right at the top of the carpet. We could send the photos out immediately, and talent could have these to drive tune into the show, because I knew enough to know that is hugely important. Making sure people tune into those live shows is on network television is huge. Making sure that fans can be scrolling on their phone and
you're seeing it kind of in real time.
You are seeing seeing it in real time. Like, oh, there's something going on tonight. Like, let me tune in. I sent this email, and I think it was Amber was in charge of like the carpet or marketing PR stuff. And I was like, I think it'd be really cool. I knew that they did the winners' portraits because I actually had produced some of those shoots for people before I moved down here.
Yeah.
So I knew those happened, but that was only like, the winners. There wasn't that many people.
Yeah.
So in my head, I was like, everyone's all dressed up. The step and repeat photos are hugely important. Again, from the people standpoint, that's where your style posts and hair and makeup and like all these outlets pick them up because those become news stories, which is also important.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was like a missing element that could be really valuable to a live show like the CMA Awards. So I sent it, and I think we got the official green light 6 days.
Wow.
I think it was not a long like lead up that we had.
Right.
And it was also the first time that I'd ever shot with a crew where I was tethered. I had a lighting tech, a digital tech.
Yeah.
I'd never done that before. I knew I needed that.
Yeah.
And that just came. That is how like that one got greenlit.
Yeah.
And my whole thing behind that one was that we had a frame in the foreground, so that it could look like I was shooting through this gold frame into this room of gold records. But I could also move around to a side and shoot down the wall, so it was a different angle. And that was like the first time I was able to show people that you can do a portrait studio. You can give a really wonderful visual experience and not feel like the viewer is looking at the same photo, just a different person standing there.
Yeah.
So that mentality dictates and continues to dictate every single portrait studio I design.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like it's so creative too. Like some of the things that you have come up with and I see, I'm just like, wow, like who thinks of that? She does. Because like the guitar strings thing, like what? I mean, like how many guitar strings did you use for that?
So I do know that number. It was over 10,000. So what happened was that was COVID. That was 21, 22, 21, something like that. And I knew that it was going to be a weird year. I like the idea of using something recycled, something kind of a set using some sort of piece of musical equipment.
Right.
And sure, we could have gotten like old guitars and things, spray paint. There was that element, but like you also don't want to visually destroy musical instruments, especially the CMA, which is a music foundation. Yeah. Whether or not you could say, hey, don't worry, these were all being thrown out. Like that's not a good optics. And
exactly.
I felt like that's where my brain started.
Yeah.
And then I kind of worked my way and I was like, well, what is something that would be thrown out no matter what? Guitar strings.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, lines and visually, how do lines appear in an image?
Yeah.
And there's a lot that you can do with that if you were to have a very long string.
Yeah.
And because it was right at the tail end of COVID, touring had just come back. And it was just back enough that I thought I could pull this off. And so when I pitched to CMA, I said, I really like the idea of using recycled guitar strings, working with artists and their guitar techs and local guitar shops in town. So every single guitar string in that set was a recycled string.
No way.
So I have hundreds of emails of me emailing management putting me in touch with either a tour manager, a guitar tech.
Oh my God, no way.
I handed out all these pouches and I would hand them out before they would go. I had different routines with different guitar techs. From Eric Church's camp, Brothers Oz. I mean, honestly, like almost everybody contributed.
That's incredible.
I can't carry some of Carrie's guitar players. I thought it was really important to showcase that it's not just the artists that are out there. Like the guitar strings were meant to show that all the musicians, all of the guitar techs, all the people in town that contribute to it.
And especially kind of like in a time like that too, when a lot of crews weren't working.
Well, a lot of crews weren't working, but it was right as I kind of looked at it as like a celebration that we're slowly getting back.
Yeah.
Because I needed enough guitar strings.
Yeah.
That was like a big part of it. And it felt more of like a community art project.
Yeah.
Where I learned to solder for 170 hours.
Oh my
It's all good. I quantified how long I soldered based on how many books I listened to. Because you couldn't like look up and solder. I just had to listen. So I just like plowed through books.
Did you have anybody help you out with any of that? Just you?
I had people. So I did all the soldering.
Gotcha.
Which turned into a whole process because I had to clean them. I forget his name, but Chris Stapleton's guitar tech was like, oh, well, are you boiling them or something? And I was like, I'm like wiping them down with alcohol. And he was like, oh, and like, you know, blood, sweat, tears, and spit were all over these.
Right. Oh,
so
yeah.
then I was like, okay, maybe I need to get some gloves. I got a stock pot. I boiled them. There was like, they got boiled, they got cleaned, they got separated. And then I had to build these like soldering stations so I could make it solder faster.
So what's like,
and then someone else built the frame. I had a crew that, a builder built this frame. And then they also had to figure out how we were going to string these and yeah.
So like that process, like, because I mean, obviously it's a date that you have to have all this set up.
Yeah.
Do they give you time like days before to get all that set up there? Or is it like a day of situation or?
That one was
especially
unique.
something like that.
That one was unique because we were there. We were there like 5 days before because we couldn't string off site. We had to string on site because the way the strings were crossing onto the floor and across the steel beams. Yeah. But I mean, the gold records, that first one was built off site and brought in day of and just went. This year's was also built off site. We pre-lit and we set it up and pre-lit the day before. Yeah. So sometimes normally it's being built off site by like a builder or a set designer.
How far in advance does that like get like approved and all that?
Normally I get a couple months.
Do you give them just like one idea or is it like a couple and then they're like
sometimes. And sometimes they come back and they say we really like that, but we need something more like this. Which I can get really excited. Oh, I've got this great idea. How cool would this be? Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we love that idea, but we need to be thinking more like this. Yeah. Which is fine. And the truth of the matter is I really like when a client is comfortable enough to say, we love that, but that's not. And saying to me, come back with something else. Yeah.
Like the ball pit thing?
No, the ball pit was like, I had 3 other ideas that day.
Dylan, you got to look these up, dude. It's insane. I looked at the guitar string one. Yeah.
The ball pit, I'm really glad we did that before COVID because that would never happen.
Right, yeah.
The ball pit, I forget, I had gone in with other ideas. And then I was like, well, what if we just built a ball pit? And they were like, okay. And I was like, okay.
But some of those photos are so insane. Like,
and that took on a life of its own in a way that I could never have imagined.
Right.
But similarly, there were different ways to shoot that. People could sit in it and balls could be thrown in the air. And the way we had the lighting and we dragged the shutter so you could see the movement. Yeah. They could lay and I could shoot it over. They could jump in. There were all these different things. And that was one of the first times where as we got into day 3 and 4, someone would walk in and be like, okay, so I saw so-and-so do this. We got to do something cooler. Right. Which to me epitomizes the purpose of having a portrait studio that looks visually cohesive but is not the same. That is not repetitive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And that's, I mean, I love that. That to me was just.
So what was your favorite one that you've done for CMA?
So I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about this because every year I'm like, am I as happy with this one as I was? The gold records will always be my favorite.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's
cool. I can't explain it, but there was a feeling I had when I woke up the next morning that was a cloud, like cloud 9. I think it was the first one. Yeah. It was the first one I convinced people that trust me, this will be a really wonderful experience. Yeah. This will be really beneficial for the client, CMA, the artist. Yeah. So I think that will forever be my favorite for that reason. And I keep every year I'm like, oh, did I get that feeling again? And it was only this year that I was like, I'm not ever going to, and that's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the most challenging one?
The guitar strings.
Oh, yeah.
But
170 hours of suffering.
So
man,
I love the guitar strings is one of my favorites. I really loved this year's. For CMA Fest, I've really only gotten to do the ball pit The ball pit one was, the other ones were done in a little bit different context. Mm-hmm. But the ball pit is also one of my favorite.
Where did they do the CMA Fest one? Where is that at?
Where were those shot?
Yeah.
So we had 2 locations. We had 2 ball pits. There was a ball pit at Music City Center, and then there was a ball pit at Nissan because there were artists that didn't go to both places and you needed both. So we shot at Music City Center till like 4 o'clock, and then we'd move over to completely different set. Yeah. All set up like everything. So we had to have 2 set up. And that's how those were done. But
so cool. It's seriously so cool.
That was the most fun. There was something about that was just.
And I feel like the artists love it too. Like is it different for them? I mean, I feel like it's different for them.
I like to
like than a normal red carpet, you know?
So I like to give people something to do. I think it's really hard to be, unless you are a supermodel, where you have spent all this time learning how to pose just standing. I think it is very hard just to stand and pose for a portrait.
Yeah.
It is very uncomfortable. People are in these outfits and everything. So I like to give people something to do. Now, it's different at CMA Fest than it would be at like an award show.
Yeah.
But even, I guess 2 years ago for CMA Awards, we had like these stairs that people could walk down. It's very little, it's a very small motion, but it is still a motion that people, an action that someone can do.
Yeah.
So I like, that is what a lot of times with the CMA projects I think about. Like, what is an action they can do?
Yeah.
As small as it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big, but it just makes it so they don't have to just stand.
Yeah.
So this year in the mirrors, we had beams coming through.
Yeah.
So people could kind of like put their hand and do some pose leaning with a beam. Or people could kind of go in the middle and put both hands up. So there was things that people could interact with.
Yeah.
Which I think leads to more dynamic images.
Yeah. Like that Ryman thing that you did with like all the colors.
Oh, that was for ACMs. That was for ACM honors.
But
yeah.
still, that was
people
cool
had something
too.
to do. They could,
like that shot of Breland. Oh my gosh, that's
he
like
is
epic.
so fun to photograph.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I've never worked with him before.
Yeah, I've only worked with him in the context of portrait studios.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Like really, really
I could
fun.
see that. I could see he could probably be like that.
He wants to have fun.
Yeah.
But I want people to come into a portrait studio that I've designed and feel like I've put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah.
Put a lot of thought into giving them to creating a moment that they enjoy, that they feel good in, that they feel is different and also worthy of whatever the event is that we're doing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Those are all things that go into how I come up with them.
Yeah.
So a lot of times someone will send me, CMA often, what are the colors? What does the logo look like? So I can see like, are there certain lines and things and something?
Yeah.
Because I look at a lot of lines and how lines are going to cut through.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yep. Yeah.
So I always ask for any branding. Anyone who comes to me, I'm like, well, do you have any branding? What are your colors? Are there things that you don't want?
Yeah.
And then I work through all of that and into what is something someone can physically do.
Yeah.
Again,
it's so amazing.
as little as possible, but it's just
so amazing, so
Thank
creative.
you.
Just like the colors, everything. Like every time like CMA happens, it's like, all right, what does she come up with now?
No pressure. No pressure.
Right.
But
people are watching.
but it's fun, and I have like a laundry list of ideas that haven't been greenlit yet.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, whether it's for CMA or somebody else, like hopefully eventually like I get to greenlight all of these ideas and bring them to life.
So how far out do you submit the ideas?
For CMAs, I start over the summer, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Although sometimes like I think guitar strings, I was like March, February.
Oh, wow.
I think I knew. And I was like, I have this idea. Bear with me.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So if it's something that I think is going to be like that,
yeah.
and sometimes it's just, I go to a lot of museums and galleries, and I don't often, I mean, I love looking at photography galleries, obviously, but I like to look at installation work. I like to look at sculptures, anything, paintings.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
Very
you just got to
inspiring.
like get ideas from around.
Yeah. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm like, I need like a week to not like have to come up with an idea, but I need to just go wander.
Yeah.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
When I go up to New York, I'll go to a lot of museums.
That's awesome.
See some exhibits.
Yeah.
I like incorporating things like that into a portrait studio for anything.
Well, it's great because, I mean, it's creative looking at older creative, and kind of incorporating that into new creative in a way, I mean, I feel like a lot of creative people kind of take from just past inspirations and stuff like that and make their own out of it. Yeah. It's almost like songs. Yeah. It's the same thing. When people write songs, they're inspired by other songs. Totally. So it's we're kind of in that same kind of lane, in a way.
Sometimes I'll be somewhere. I think I was at like a theater show and I saw this really cool lighting element and I like sneakily took a photo of it and sent it to one of my lighting techs. I was like, one day. And he was like, no, that cannot happen. Or like he'll file it away or like the people because and it could be the most random thing I'm seeing. Right. Oh, I'm walking in the street. Look, this is really interesting how the light is like the sunlight is hitting. How can we recreate this?
But that's
and
awesome,
just like
though.
file it away.
It's awesome. That is so awesome.
You have to like you can't just. You can't come up with ideas sitting in a dark room. You have to go like
there's
see.
inspiration everywhere.
And
that's what it is.
Because people are looking at photos so much more now than they ever were.
100%.
So feeling that you did something that was unique and valuable, there is a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Do you think nowadays, like you say, you know, people are looking at so many photos now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think from like back in the day, say take it back like 30, 40 years ago,
mm-hmm.
when people would be out on the road with artists?
Yeah.
I feel like there's obviously not a lot of photos. No. You know, do you I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it'll ever be kind of the same as it was, because there's the volume, exactly. There's so much.
I think
there's no mystery anymore.
No.
You know, because you could look back at like photos of rock bands in the 70s and mm-hmm. go, damn, what did they do after that show? And you never know, because there was no like real like kind of like a photographer back there shooting behind the scenes on an iPhone. You know what I mean? But it's like, I feel like there was a mystery there.
Yeah.
You know, that
I was going to say probably because I was not. Everyone would be arrested. Yeah. If we're talking 70s rock,
everybody would be arrested.
For the record, I will also say, I think that there comes a time in an evening when you are on tour where, like, don't take any more photos.
Yeah, you stop. Yeah, 100%.
And not because anything 100%. Bad is going on, just because let people just be. Yeah. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's one thing that, you know, a lot of people will ask me, you know, with how do you do what you do, mm-hmm. you know, being out on the road and shooting behind the scenes and photos and all, you know, all the elements. And it's like, and we had this conversation with other people on this, that, you know, you got to know when to be here, mm-hmm. but then you also have to know when to be way back here, you know, and there's a lot of people that don't know how to be way back here. And those are the ones that maybe won't last as long, because you can't just be here mm-hmm. all the time. You know, you have to let the artist still be in their creative. Yeah. And sometimes an artist has to be by themselves or not having a camera at them mm-hmm. to be creative. Yeah. You know, so I feel like there's this element of knowing how to be there, but then also knowing how to be more of the fly on the wall. Yeah. You know,
I also think there's a trust that comes with working with an artist and knowing when to walk into a room, when knowing when to leave a room. Yeah. Knowing when to just stand quietly and put the camera down so people know that you're not taking a photo. Yeah. Because you have to, I think you like read people's comfort levels, and you can tell when someone's uncomfortable that you have a camera that's kind of up. Yeah. So there are definitely times where I just put it on my shoulder and just stand quietly, because I'm like, there does not need to be a photo at this moment. If the artist wants a photo, they will say, hey, Katie, can you take this photo real quick?
Exactly.
But no one's ever going to be mad at you for being respectful and being able to read a room and read people's comfort levels.
Yeah, exactly. I was very recently in the studio with an artist, to remain nameless right now, but spent a week in the studio with them, and you know, it was the same thing. It's like, you got to let them be mm-hmm. creative. Yeah. You know, you got to let them have their moment. But on the other hand, we have to get kind of what we are hired there to be and get.
It is,
you know what I mean?
It's like, get this, but do it from a distance. Oh, but you have to go in and get this.
Exactly. Like, so it's a very push and pull type of thing, because, you know, it's like, you don't want to make the artist upset but you need to make management happy. You know what I mean? By getting, it's a push and pull. Yeah. You know, but you have to accomplish both. Yeah.
This was a long time ago. I was once sent out, and management was like, you have to get this. And the artist was just like, no, we already did this. I was like,
I've been there.
Okay. But like and I think things like that taught me that there could become a time in my career where I'm simply collateral damage. It is nothing that I have done, but that you get stuck. And it has actually never happened. I've never been collateral damage, which is wonderful. But it is this, you're like, oh, this was what I was told to do. Oh, but this person,
I always say I'm just the messenger.
Right? Every time I'm like, I'm just the messenger. Yeah. This is what I was told.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, hey, you know, I got the camera, you know, and it's like, if we have to do a liner, we got to do a liner. But if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. What am I going to do? Am I going to force you to do it? No. It's like, I don't want to piss you off. You know, it's like, so. That's true. Okay, so this is one question that I've been asking everybody. Okay, you ready for it? It's kind of cool, actually, because it's very kind of geared towards, you know, people that are new to this and all that. If you had one camera and one lens to take out on the road for one weekend, what would it be?
R5 51.2.
The which
the
one?
R5 and a 51.2. The 50 prime.
Just the 50.
Yep.
So no zoom lens.
Nope.
You're a badass.
Because you can't get the backstage stuff without it.
Right. Because it's too dark?
It's too dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also love a prime lens because a prime lens makes you physically move as opposed to just zooming your hand.
It's challenging. It's definitely challenging.
It makes you, I'm going to crouch down and shoot up, or I'm going to physically move in or physically move out.
Exactly.
Or I'm going to shoot from up here. A prime lens doesn't let you be lazy.
So Canon R5 and a 50.
Yeah.
Damn, you're a badass.
I feel like a popular answer would probably be like the 24-70, that 2.8. Right. Okay, I'm sure, right? Yeah. Everyone would say that 2.8, and I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, and maybe that is the logical answer. I'm not saying that that's not the logical answer. However, so when I lived in New York, I had a much older, like the 6D. Okay, and when I would go to work, I would just throw that in my bag with the nifty 50, which the plastic one, which I think is like $120 now. Pretty sure I got it for like $80.
Yeah.
The 50 1.8. And I would.
And what a great little lens. Cheap little great lens. It's awesome.
The photos I made.
You've worked with it with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love having the 1.2 now. It's great. But granted, I was in New York, so if I did a lot of work photographing in the subways, and again, that 50 makes you physically move to make photos. Yeah. And it was so light. I love that lens. Yeah. I know I've never shot with a 35 specifically, I guess I did with my original film camera.
I would choose the 50 though. If I had to choose one prime lens to take, it would definitely be a 50.
That's a really good question.
You like that?
I do. Also, it doesn't require
because everybody's different.
Yeah. A 1.2, like, you need a flash.
Yeah.
If you can have it, but if you don't have a flash, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great.
What's yours?
Mine would be the R5 of the 24-70.
Or the 28-70.
That 28-70 is a beast.
I know.
I love that lens. Dylan and I were talking about that earlier. It is incredible.
It is. It's
heavy.
I don't have it. Heavy. I've rented it a number of times, and I've teetered on getting it, and I'm like, do I really need this?
Yeah, it was funny. I ran into John Shearer when they did the CMA Fest at Ascend during like the whole COVID thing. Remember when they shifted everything over there?
Yeah.
And John had just gotten it, and he loved it, and I was just like, oh my God, can I just like hold it just to see, because I hadn't had it yet, and I was contemplating buying it, and it was really hard lens to find at that point. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my God, this lens, it's just for concert stuff, it's incredible.
It's so sharp. Have you seen Canon's got this, I don't know if it's out yet, but the 28 to 105 2.8.
The 20, I think it's a 20, is it a 24?
20, I'm sorry, 24 to 105.
24 to 105
2.8.
Yes.
Which
let me tell you, that's going to be a videographer game changer, in my opinion, because I feel like you could have just that one lens and run around, and you're getting a 105, and you're getting 2.8 all the way through. Well,
it's a 2.8 because I have the 24 to 105, but it's
a 4.
It's a 4.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel like with that 2.8 as a through, that's going to be, I think I want it. I actually want it because I feel like I could, what?
But that's the thing about the 28 to 70, the 2.0.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah. But just to have that extra 105.
I know. You're not wrong.
You're
not wrong.
Just a little bit longer.
If Canon could just tell me in advance, like, what lenses do you have down the line so I can budget, be like, I'm going to wait for this one, because that would really, my bank account would really appreciate that.
I know. But that 28 to 70, we were just watching footage that I shot with it earlier, and it's just, you see the difference. I mean, it's such a huge difference than the 24 to 70 for sure. It's a beast. It's awesome.
It's just really heavy.
So if you had a second camera, what would it be?
Second camera.
I haven't asked that question yet.
So when everyone was like very into the Sony cameras, I ended up getting the A7 III. Yeah. And I got one lens with it. The 24 G Master, the 1.4. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My hands and I never got the hang of the settings. I mean, I have the hang of them, but I don't move as quickly on a Sony that I do on a Canon. But I will say that 24 1.4 is pretty amazing. for what we do
Yeah.
and being backstage and capturing little moments.
Yeah.
And in a perfect world where I'm just there was a couple of weeks where years ago, I think it was 2019, was out with FGL.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really doing any touring with them. I was just documenting for a couple of weeks. And I had, I think it was the Mark IV at the time, but like the 50 prime.
Yeah.
And then 24 prime.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Like 24 prime is awesome.
So but the 24 prime was on the Sony.
Oh, gotcha.
So I would have the Canon, the Mark IV with the 50 1.2, and then I'd have the Sony A7 III with the 24 1.4.
Yeah.
And from a documentation standpoint, so maybe there was a flash in my book bag, but
yeah,
I was just documenting.
Yeah.
So those two lenses were just I love a prime
We're
lens.
such nerds, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're such nerds.
How nerdy are we?
So nerdy, but I'm nerdy too.
It's the best.
It's my favorite.
Right.
When I go to New York, I'm like having a bad day. Let me just go to
Just
B&H.
go to B&H.
I'm just gonna walk around.
Right.
Let's see how much money I can lose here.
I know. It's so funny because it's like, I'll talk to people, that just don't know cameras. And I'm just like, yeah, you got this lens, it's a 70, and it's a 1.2 or whatever, and they're just like, wait, what? What are you talking about? It's just camera talk. It's camera talk.
I have a funny story I'll tell you after this about camera talk. But yeah.
Recent touring
Yeah.
with Ashley McBride, John Party. Stories? Any cool stories? Any fun stories? I want to hear are there any disaster stories? Like, have you ever had like a memory card go bad or anything like that?
No, it is my biggest fear.
Right.
It is my biggest fear. So,
I hopefully it doesn't.
Why would you ask a question like that, Jeff?
Well, you just never
It's
know
true.
because I've heard stories. You hear stories.
I haven't, but I shoot to 2 memory cards.
Do you? Oh, that's smart.
I shoot to 2 memory cards, and until I can so I have a server that I can remote back up to.
Yeah.
Until I can get photos backed up to a server, they have to be saved in 2 places. For example, like I'll upload photos to my computer.
Yeah.
That I'm working off of locally, and then for the rest of that weekend, I will either back up to another portable hard drive that will be physically somewhere else, or if I'm moving real quick, I will take a memory card and stick it in my pocket, my purse, my wallet, if we have to run somewhere real quick, because I know that they are still physically
smart. It's very smart. Yeah, we do. I do that with a lot of touring stuff. Is there's always a master drive and a backup drive.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
And then management gets one copy.
Yeah.
And then I keep a copy.
Yeah.
In 2 separate buildings.
Yeah, learning the whole. One of my best friends is an engineer, and he built me like a whole server and how
nice,
like both local and backs up to the cloud. So that's been really nice that I can access anywhere. So if I'm somewhere that has if the venue has fast Wi-Fi, I can back up the night before.
We need to talk.
Oh, actually, we really should talk.
I need that.
Yeah,
because that's a good way to like get management photos, like if they need it.
Oh,
you know
yeah,
what I
because
mean?
you can actually. This conversation for after this, but yeah.
because there's like a Dropbox, obviously.
There's Dropbox, but you can actually send. I have a Synology, which is basically its own little mini computer.
Yeah, because I would love to like back up all my stuff right after a show.
Yeah, we should talk.
Just in case, yeah, for sure.
But I don't have. I'm trying to think of like a good disaster.
Or not even
Or
camera disaster, but something just funny that happened on the road, or a funny story, or something. I almost called this podcast On the Edge of the NDA.
I know, it's a really good name too.
So sit on the edge of the NDA.
I mean, I do a lot of yoga with 8 men these days when I go on tour with John Party, which people have seen these videos. We do yoga. I mean, be in a room with 8 grown men going, "Happy baby." It's hysterical.
Right.
Give me a second.
It's fine.
Should I have had like a good story? I mean, I like to think of my life and career as a series of me getting to go places and do things that I have zero business doing.
Right.
Like, why was I ever at Sturgis Motorcycle Rally? But I was so excited to go.
Yeah.
Like,
that's one thing about our job is we get put into places. Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I just had this conversation today. You know, just like I'm in a spot with these people that are insanely famous, and I'm like, what am I doing here?
Regularly.
All the time.
All the time.
You know, and it's like, what is this life? It's so weird.
Yeah. I think that's where
And that's where you have to stay professional,
Completely.
you know, and not like running up to people and being like, oh, can I get my picture taken with you? You
No,
know,
we'll never do that.
because some people would.
Yeah, totally. I do try to like, it sounds silly, but like I'll take a selfie of myself or have someone take a photo of me because I realize I spend my life documenting for others.
Yeah.
But how will I tell my grandkids? Oh, look,
Yeah.
grandma did this. Sure, grandma.
Yeah.
Sure you did. You know, I don't know. Let's have some dead air for a second that you'll cut out, and I will think of like a good, funny,
Yeah.
like ridiculous.
We chop right here.
We chop right here.
So think of something like any, like, I don't know, like any cool photo that you took that was like a mistake or like something that like, did somebody fall in a crowd or was there anything?
I haven't had anyone fall in a crowd, thank God. I regularly worry about the day I step off the stage. Don't get me wrong. I'm very good. I like teeter my foot out. I have a whole thing about not falling off the edge of the stage.
Right. Yeah.
That have you ever fallen off a stage?
No.
See, it's like a huge fear of mine.
Yeah. That is a big fear. But I subconsciously, whenever I'm on a stage, I like will put my foot
Same. Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, it's almost like it's not necessarily like a balance, but it's just like a safety, like,
Yeah,
okay,
I know where it is.
there's still floor there, you know, but
And
I know it's close.
I do the exact same thing.
Because I've seen videos on Instagram of people falling off the stage.
Nope.
Like videographers falling off the stage. I'm like, ooh.
I once like half tripped on Windy City Smokeout, actually. I I forget who, it was not the headliner, but it was early on, and I was kind of like walking back as they were walking back off the thrust. And I like fell back on my butt, and I was like, cool. And I like ran off stage.
I've done that. I was with Keith Urban
Yeah.
back, I feel like it was 2009, and we were somewhere in Canada, and I was filming him coming off the stage.
Yeah.
And I was going backwards.
Yeah.
And he was coming towards me.
Yeah.
And I kept going and going. Bam, I was on my ass like that. And
Like-
I was like, oh my God, I just fell. I'll never forget that.
I'm trying to think, like, that remains a big fear of mine, of being on
Yeah.
the stage and falling.
Yeah.
Like, I like make sure my shoelaces are tied so tight
Yeah.
before, and everything is before
Yeah.
a show.
While you're thinking about that, here's another one.
Okay.
When I was out with Keith Urban again, and this was probably 2007. I feel like this was on the Love Pain tour.
Okay.
And this is when I was using a Panasonic HVX 200
Okay.
as a video. I don't know if you remember that camera or not, Dylan, but I was in the pit, and it was during one of his big songs where people were jumping up and down
Yeah.
and just having a good time. And I'm like sitting there filming the crowd, and all of a sudden this girl's arm just comes down right on the camera, and the camera just hits the ground and just done. I was like, that was one of those moments. I was just like, oh my God.
Do you put the strap around your neck now all the time?
Mostly. Yeah. Mostly.
Sometimes I don't, and I'm like aware that I'm not doing it, and I'm like, you're just asking for it.
Yeah. Whenever I have two cameras, I definitely
Yeah.
do. You know, because whenever I'm out on the road,
Yeah.
I always have the two R5s with me.
Yeah.
And I've got it where I could just flip it right into video mode.
Yeah. Oh, we used to
So,
talk about that. You told me
yeah.
about that, and mine doesn't do it as fast as there's like two, it's like a 2-button thing.
I'll show you.
I know there's a
You
one
could
button.
literally just do one
One
button,
button.
and you are literally photo
Yeah.
to video like that.
Yeah, I have it on a 2-button. I can't figure out why I can't get it to do the 1 button.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah, for sure. You got one yet?
I'm like literally trying to go through my head of all of the cockamamie things I've gotten into. I got to drive like massive construction equipment.
Is there photo evidence of this?
Yeah, there totally is.
That we could like post on this?
Yeah, there is. Also, why? This is gonna like eat at me because like I feel like I need to have a good disaster story, or now I'm asking for it.
Right. No.
I'm gonna be
It won't
terrified
happen.
the next time I go
No,
out
it won't happen.
on tour for a weekend.
It won't happen. I'm just fishing for stories from the past.
I know, and I'm feel like I'm disappointing you. But in general, I regularly feel like it's this feeling that like you're playing dress up in a world in which like I don't belong, because I never wanted to be the person on the stage. I always wanted to be the
Yeah.
person documenting.
Yeah.
So like I'm getting to do all of these things because of what I document.
Yeah.
But every time I'm like somewhere new, I'm like, or some event or on a private plane or all of these
Right.
things where I'm like, what am I doing? What is this life?
I know.
Or like at a Sturgis, driving ridiculous equipment, even like in New York, getting to go to places that like you shouldn't get to go to, but
Yeah.
because you're with talent, you get
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
All
We
of these
definitely get
things.
spoiled out there. We get spoiled when we're with the artists,
Oh
for
my
sure.
God.
For sure.
It is wild.
Because the thing is being a photographer and videographer for an artist, you know, like we were talking about, it's like nowadays you have to be like with them.
Yeah.
You know, so whatever they're doing and experiencing
Yeah.
on a huge high level, you're there with them.
100%.
And that's like some of the things that we're able to do. It's like there's just, I mean, just in general, it's like I get to film Carrie Underwood in the studio.
Yeah.
It's like I'm literally just 3 of us in
Yeah.
there. You know, nobody else gets to do this
Yeah.
in the world.
No.
You
And
know?
I think it's cool. So, like you said, you get to be in the studio with Carrie Underwood, which is, I mean, a dream. Like, would you ever imagine like that would be like your job growing up? Like,
I know. No,
like,
exactly.
You make a living doing that. And I think when you were talking about like the access and the things that we get to do because of like, we're always with the artists. Lately, like I have fun on a day when an artist has a day off. If I'm with them, like I go out with them, and whatever kind of cockamamie adventure they get up to, I get to go do as well. Whether it's like driving ATVs somewhere or what is it? Construction equipment, or whatever it is. It's like you kind of get to be this a fly on, not a voyeur, but a fly on the wall, and experience things that you never would have otherwise gotten to do.
Exactly.
And to me, that is it's visually, I'm like, oh, I'm getting to document things that aren't just the tour.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting to do all these other things that are just like cool. Like this is just fun. This is different. And like, I get to think differently.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why am I here? Cool.
Yeah, I know.
Great.
I know. Well, it's funny. There was one time where I have to tell this story because I don't think I'll ever tell this on any other guest podcast. But there was one time because we talk about like being in certain places that, you know, just sort of this, how random is this? But I was on tour with Tim and Faith back in 2006.
I saw that tour at Madison Square Garden.
On Soul to Soul 2.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was there. Crazy. But we did, they did a benefit thing for Katrina.
Yeah.
And it was like a dinner thing in New Orleans, but it was at Emeril Lagasse's restaurant in New Orleans.
That's cool.
And he was there. But they took me to film stuff, but the thing is there's sometimes when you go to these places that they won't allow you to film, you know, but it was just one of those moments where it was just like, oh, you're not going to really be able to film much, but you're here. But they put me and somebody else like in the kitchen because I couldn't be out in this event thing because I'm not a guest.
You're not a guest.
You know, so I'm like sitting there at this table and somebody comes up and they're like, are you hungry? You want some food? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it's fine. I got nothing else to do, you know? The next thing I know, like back behind me, Emeril Lagasse comes and he serves me food. Like what? And I got a picture taken with him. You know, I had to.
Yes, that
I had
100%.
to. You know, like he's coming in and giving me food. I was like, wait, what? And that was just one of those moments.
That's
you know,
awesome.
That's one of those crazy moments that we get to, you know, things we get to experience.
Yeah.
You know, with these artists. But it's just kind of these pinch me like, what am I doing
all the time.
here? You know,
Regularly.
who gets to say that that happened to?
I like to remind myself, like when I'm in the thick of it or I'm really stressed, I'm like, 13-year-old Katie is losing her mind right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And I say
exactly
it regularly. When I'm stressing out, talking to my friends, I'm like, 13-year-old Katie is completely losing her mind because this is an insane statement. I'm literally doing my when I grow up.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing that right now, which is insane.
Yeah.
So
we're so lucky. Honestly, we are. We're very lucky.
I get to run around with the camera and I can make a living doing this.
Exactly.
That's insane.
Exactly.
And to anybody listening, it is hard work.
This
is not like all hunky dory.
Yeah.
But it's really fun.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people it's like, you know, with this industry, you got to know what you're doing.
Oh yeah, you
have to have the talent to get in, but it's the relationships in country music that will keep you here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like it's just that kind of industry. It's
Yeah.
a family. The
Completely.
Nashville industry, country music industry is a family
It's
for
like,
sure.
If people like having you in the room, if you are
Yeah.
trusted, you will get phone calls and text messages. And sometimes I'm like, oh, hey, who'd you get my name from? And it will be someone
Yeah.
that I worked with 5 years prior
Yeah.
that gave them my name.
Yeah.
And you really said it perfectly.
Yeah.
Your skill gets you there,
Yeah.
but the longevity is in how you treat people in your relationships.
1000%.
And like knowing what we've talked about, when to enter a room and when to leave a room.
Yeah.
And knowing how to be professional,
Yep.
which is hard when you're on tour with people.
Yeah.
Because the lines between like professional, what is professional with the
Yeah.
people that you share everything with.
Yeah.
But I find that's also wildly important.
Yeah.
And that also contributes to your longevity is what is your behavior on tour? What is your behavior around the artist? Do you know how to behave when there's a sponsor or a client around? Things
Yeah.
like that. I think
Yeah.
all of those things. Like
Super,
you can be
super
the best
important, yeah.
photographer, but if you are
exactly. If you're an asshole or if you're not easy to get along with or be around,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you're not gonna be in this
Yeah.
business.
never gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. If you had anything to say, kind of wrapping up a little bit,
Okay.
actually, first, let me do this. So, my wife
Yes.
is in skincare.
Okay.
Okay, she has her own business here in Nashville.
Okay.
And I didn't know that you lived in Nashville. I'm like, for
Really?
some reason, I thought you like lived in New York or something.
I mean, I go
don't
up
know
there. I'm
why.
up there a lot.
Yeah.
Well, because I came from a lot, because I was there for 9 years before I came here.
Yeah.
And then now I go back up a lot.
Yeah. So my wife owns a skincare company here in
Okay.
Nashville, and because you're one of our guests, she wanted to give you a gift.
Thank you so much.
And it is a thing from Skinology. So there's the little,
Thank you, Skinology.
There's a little promo thing right there. And
Cassie's, right?
Cassie, yeah, she's a badass. She's actually here too. She's
is?
watching on the monitor.
Hi,
Yeah.
Cassie.
Yeah, yeah. She wanted to be. She wanted
Your
to. She
your
wanted
vacation
to
looked
be
amazing when you and Jeff went away for like a month.
right.
I took notes.
But there's a little something
Thank you.
for you.
I have lots of thoughts, and
Yes, and she's a badass for sure.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really, Cassie, wherever you are, thank you.
So, any advice to the new generation? We'll close it out with that.
I think it's important to know that not everyone has the same trajectory and the same path. And I think that there was a time where you were a photographer, you would get an agent would help you do, there was a traditional route to becoming a professional photographer. And I think that that is way out the window.
Mm-hmm.
I came in differently because I had all these connections from people.
Yeah.
Other people, are friends with an artist and they sort of grow with that artist and then meet others. I think being respectful and making sure that you know everything that is you can know about your craft. And that if you don't know something, call someone.
Yeah.
It is okay to ask a question. Jeff, I called you how many months ago because I was trying to figure out a budget problem and I didn't know where to start. And so I picked the phone and I said, hey, can we talk?
Yep.
A good friend of mine, Diana King, who's a wonderful photographer here in Nashville, she and I talk about budgets, or I'm trying to figure out something technically. Like I've only called John Shear a million times
Yeah.
about, hey, how do I handle this?
Yeah.
Or it's really important to establish friendships with people that you trust so that you can ask them questions. They will ask you questions and that you have people that can help you grow.
Yeah.
And
Because even like us now that we've been doing this for so long, we still ask questions and we still learn stuff.
Oh my God.
Constantly, and that'll never end.
the amount of time I spend looking at other photographers' work. If another photographer shoots an artist that I've shot their show a lot of times, I always look at it because
Yeah.
they are looking at it. I've looked at this set, this show, the same time. I've looked at this same set and shot this set. I see it a certain way. I want to see how somebody else sees it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
think about that.
Yeah.
I think constantly making sure that you're aware of what it's not like a copying thing. It's just like, how are other people thinking?
Yeah.
And it goes back to I look at photographers in different fields and older work. What are documentary photographers doing? It doesn't matter what they're documenting.
Yeah.
If it's in politics, if it's in news, I like looking elsewhere because I think it helps impact what I do now and it helps me think differently.
Yeah.
I can't just look at music photography
Yeah.
because then I'm only thinking music.
Yeah.
But there's so many elements you can pull in from different styles and different
Yeah.
types of photographers. and learn from how other people see something that maybe you see every day.
Yeah.
But they see it differently.
And that's one great thing about photographers and videographers.
Yeah.
We're not just music. It's everything.
It is everything.
Everything.
Every 4 years I dip my toe into politics. It is unlike anything I do. It is,
Yeah.
but I love doing it because it's completely different and makes my brain think differently.
Yeah.
But I think young photographers, especially now, it's really hard to command a rate when there are people that will do things for free, which is very hard.
Very. Yeah.
And I think what helps that, and we talked about a lot on this podcast, is your relationships and how you are as a person.
Yeah.
Because you will get to a point where people understand the value in having a responsible adult either out on the road or working with an artist.
Yep.
Because, we will pay for that. We will pay because we know this person is, aside from being wildly talented, works with the whole crew very well.
Yes, exactly.
But I think you have to put yourself out there. I think you have to find every opportunity to just send an email. The worst thing that happens when you send an email is they don't respond.
Yeah.
If they respond and say no, they opened your email.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a small project. There's a project that I've been working on here for many years. The Girls of Nashville, they do these shows. Now they're at City Winery. Mm-hmm. When I first got to town, they were doing them, I don't know how often, at 3rd and Lindsley.
Uh-huh.
And someone who was working with it was someone I had worked with at People. And I was like, oh, here's like a group of women. Maybe I can just go do portraits. And I emailed one of the people that was working with them. And I was like, hey, like, would it be cool if I did some portraits backstage? Maybe I can get somebody to run them. Or, the artist can use them. Mm-hmm. And I admit, I went into that, like, I didn't get paid the first one or two that I did. But to me, I was still in a spot where I was trying to convince people that I wanted to do unique portrait studios.
Yeah.
Getting opportunity to meet women that were performing at this show, and me getting to decide whatever the creative was valuable.
Yeah.
And then after 2, they started paying me, and I made money, and it was great. And until now, I still do it a couple times a year, and it's wildly valuable because I get to meet all of these women who, a lot of them have hired me.
Yeah.
But you have to, you got to work to find your opportunities.
Yeah.
And again, send those emails, do your research, but send those emails. Every once in a while, I get gun shy on sending an email, and then I'm like, why? The worst that happens is they don't respond.
They don't respond, exactly.
When you get a no, that's fantastic. They opened your email.
Yeah, exactly. It's true.
And I that's what I tell.
Yeah.
Know what you want to do. Don't and get really good at what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Get really good at it.
Have the passion drive you.
Yeah.
Passion's got to drive you first.
Yeah.
You get paid for that passion. That's secondary, and it's great.
Yeah.
But it's like that passion is first, 100%.
People see that you are excited and like you are thinking creatively on behalf of the artist.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
When I go on tour with someone, I'm like, hey, I actually thought this could be a cool, even if it's like a real idea.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this person's like coming up with ideas that maybe our marketing or our social team would be coming up with, but that's actually a really great idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to be passionate about who you're working with and what you're doing.
Yeah.
But it shows because there are people who will come to town and don't have the passion and they don't last.
Because they just think, oh, well, I can make money doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like, but there's got to be, you have to have an eye. You have to have some creativity. You got to know kind of how to work some gear and, kind of do the thing.
Just know how to take a photo off automatic. Just like know.
Right.
Just like understand the fundamentals.
Learn manual right off the bat.
I mean, I didn't even go there. I just said off. Pick your poison. Aperture, shutter, priority.
When you get a camera, just learn off of manual.
So what something's funny about that? Because like on any photo, you open up, you can get your file info, you can see everything.
Yeah.
When I first had that camera, and in college I studied photography abroad in Paris. And I was doing these double exposures and multiple exposures in the Paris metro. And I was really trying to understand what was happening. And I had a notebook. And every frame, I wrote down what my settings were so that I could go back and understand.
Yeah,
and I did that for a long time. Not even just then, even earlier on. Because I had, you're learning how...
It's part of that study.
You're learning that triangle.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, I did that. And I think now, because it's automated, people don't go into that.
Yeah.
They don't understand why something looks the way it does.
Yeah. It's the easy way out.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like, oh, I could just put it on auto, cool, and get a great photo, awesome. But there's so many techniques that you could use with different, selections on your camera.
Manual.
Yeah,
Learn manual.
Exactly.
It's great knowing that auto's there, but learn manual.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever this is not I've done like a shutter priority setting in certain circumstances, but I don't know that I've ever put my photo on full automatic. I have
Never.
to think about that.
Never.
Yeah.
I always shoot manual
Yeah.
all the time, every
Yeah.
time.
I can't get past not being able to control everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get used to it too. I mean, it's like, when you take a shot and it's not, it's boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom. It's just clockwork to
Yeah.
you, at a point where you've done the practice so
Yeah.
many times for
Yeah.
so many years,
Every once in a while, and this happened recently, I was like, something wasn't looking right in some of my photos, and I was really frustrated. And so I was going in, I'm like, what am I doing weird, whatever. And I actually called David Bergman, and I said, I've been noodling on this problem. Like, what am I doing? And in back to the point of like having people in this industry that you can like call and ask like a crazy random question to, he was like, oh, try this. And I was like, thank you, David Bergman. Because I do feel like sometimes I get so focused on one thing that something else goes wrong, and not goes wrong, but it's not looking how I want it to look, or my photos aren't doing what I want them to do. And I'm like, what am I missing? It could just be like one night. Like, what did I miss this night?
Right.
And I'll go through all my file info and be like, but was my setting weird? Was my...
Right.
Yeah, I still do that.
It's the study. It's back to that studying.
Yeah,
It's almost like a football player watching,
tape.
Tape.
Yeah.
Exactly. Same thing. Same exact thing.
It's I hadn't thought about it, but it's 100% just like that.
Yeah. So cool. I'm so glad you came out here.
Is that good advice for someone?
I think it's amazing.
You just have
the
to.
great thing.
Work hard.
Yeah, exactly. It is. You have to work hard.
Yeah.
You have to work hard. I mean, there was nights that I was up till 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning editing videos.
Yeah. I guess
to learn how to do this.
Yeah, and I guess yes, you could say it. You have to know the right people and get in with the right people. But at the end of the day, as long as your work is really, really good, and you know your skill, you know your talent, you know what you're doing, and you know how to like interact with people, like just keep at it. Like that
exactly
shows.
And don't be an ass.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say it, but like I pretty much aspire to the don't be an asshole.
Right. I mean, it's true. It's totally
Not being
true.
an asshole is really important.
It's totally true. Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Was it fun?
I've never done this before.
I know, either have I. I mean, this is like my first podcast ever. So
I've done it in the sense of I've called you to talk, and I've called other people like, hey, let's talk about this. What are we not,
Yeah.
But
cool.
This was really fun. And you put together such a great list of photographers.
I can't believe they all said yes. It's
so
amazing.
good.
Thank you. I can't wait for everybody to see this, because it's good, because it's like everybody's got a different perspective on everything. And that's what's great about photographers and videographers, is they're all different.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I feel like I'm going to listen and be like, oh, also the beyond the edge of the NDA thing.
Yeah.
But I say that, but I actually have nothing that would have been within. It's really just, I'm going to be thinking about this all night. I'm going to walk out the door and think of something.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will.
Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
Thank you for coming out.
Of course.
Amazing.
This is great.
And that's a wrap. That's
awesome.
That's it for
Thanks,
Katie.
guys. Thank you. This is awesome. That's a wrap. This was really fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah.